So folks, the question is, how do you get your practice to work without you having to do all of the work? Well, the answer is in something I call the practice operating system. If your team sees systems as a punishment or just simply as a checklist to please the boss, they'll never ever stick. But if they see systems as a pathway for doing great work, for reducing stress and for getting recognition, they will embrace them. One of the biggest reasons chiropractors don't systematize is it feels overwhelming. So much to document, so many things to try and fix. So here's the trick. Start small, start smart. Start where mistakes happen most often. These are your leverage points. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. This is another on-the-road podcast. I'm still sitting in Darwin as I'm recording this, and I'm very, very quickly getting used to the Darwin lifestyle here. The pace is slow, the water is warm, the sand is white. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. Now, if you've been following along, you know we're deep into a 9-part series walking through the 7-figure lifestyle practice. This is my framework for helping you to build a high income, high enjoyment, low overhead practice. This triangle helps us as chiropractors solve the 3 biggest practice killing problems. The first being nobody knows us, okay? This is a visibility problem. Most chiropractors still, sadly to this day, remain their community's best kept secret. People simply do not know about you as well. The second practice killing problem is that no one stays. And while we might be tempted to think this is a communication problem, it's really a trust problem. And the third one is no time. This is a leadership problem. This is not about trying to be more effective. This is not trying to squeeze more minutes, out of your hour, so on and so forth. This is about us stepping into leadership. Now, we've already tackled visibility and trust in earlier podcast episodes, and now we're on the final side of this triangle talking about no time. This is something that most of us as chiropractors are all too aware of. It's the somewhat never-ending hustle, the overflowing inbox, the feeling that you can't stop or everything might fall apart. Many of you will say things to me like, there's no way, Angus, that we could take 12 weeks off the practice like you and Lauren have. You're so lucky to do that. And whilst, yes, we are lucky and fortunate, not all of this has to do with luck. It has a lot to do with systems, okay? We're going to talk about that in today's episode in particular, okay? But here's the thing. This is not a time problem. It's a leadership problem, okay? And what you want is not more hacks to squeeze an extra 30 minutes out of your day. What we want from a proper practice is a self-sustaining practice, a business that can breathe without us having to be the lungs. Now, there are 3 pathways that help us to solve the time problem that step us into leadership, okay? The first is the CEO pathway, and this is thinking and planning like a leader, not an employee. Last episode, I did a deep dive into this, and I asked you to investigate what is your relationship like with your business. We have a relationship with our significant others, with our kids, those of you that have kids, with our parents, with our practice members, but we also have a relationship with our business, and we don't think of it like that. We don't think of it as a human entity. And when you ask yourself the question, what does my business want from me? The answers can be profound. And often what it wants is just more attention, okay? We did a deeper dive into that in the last episode, okay? The second pathway through there is the practice operating system. This is standard operating procedures that actually run your business. And the third pathway there is culture code. I'm going to talk about culture code next week. But today we're going to talk about practice operating procedures. And we're going to look at a few different kind of angles as well. Okay. Now, most of you didn't become a chiropractor because you wanted to feel like a full-time firefighter. You always be putting out fires here and there, chasing loose ends, cleaning up mistakes. You're not leading. We end up reacting day to day. And if your practice only works when you're in the building, you don't own a business, you have a job. You have a job with a logo, a Facebook and an Instagram page, and that's about it. Now, here's the painful part. This job here never lets you clock off, okay? It wakes you up at night with staff issues. It texts you during holidays. It makes you feel guilty when you do finally step away from it. So, folks, The question is, how do you get your practice to work without you having to do all of the work? Well, the answer is in something I call the practice operating system. And just like your phone has an operating system that allows dozens of different apps to work together, your practice needs a system that allows all of the moving parts to sync, to scale, and to succeed without our constant input. And it's not about being in control, it's about freedom as well. It's a difference between chaos and clarity, okay? So this is the cost of no symptoms. Here's how you know that your practice doesn't have a true operating system. First, you're always putting out fires. Second, everyone does things differently. Third, you can't take a proper holiday. And four, you're not sure what's working or what's failing. Now, it's important to know both of those, okay? Those four signs again are you're always putting out fires, everyone does things differently, you can't take a proper holiday, and you're not sure what's working or failing. Without systems, everything feels urgent. Staff make up their own workflows. You feel stuck doing everything because nobody else can do it your way. Does that sound familiar? But here's what systems give you. System gives you, first of all, clarity. You'll know what's working and what's not. It'll give you consistency, okay? Every patient and staff member has a repeatable experience. Third, it gives you freedom. You can step away without things falling apart. And fourth and finally, it gives you scalability. You can grow without drowning. Now, let's be honest. Most chiropractors already have a little bit of a system somewhere. Maybe it's a printed manual. Maybe it was 5 years ago. Maybe it's a Google Doc that no one remembers the password to. If it's there, though, the problem is that nobody is following it, okay? The problem isn't the documentation. The problem is buy-in. And you don't get buy-in with rules, you get buy-in with culture. We're going to talk a lot about culture next week. Now, trying to enforce systems without buy-in is a bit like installing seatbelts and hoping passengers will buckle up without explaining why they need to buckle up, okay? Most are not going to do it. But if you show them a crash test video, everyone clicks in. The why now becomes obvious. So what creates buy-in? First of all, you must involve your team, okay? This is not about dictating. This is about co-creating. And so when you're wanting to put together your systems, you want to ask your team, how do you do this? What's working? What feels clunky? The second thing you need to do is explain the why behind the system and the procedures, the standard operating procedures. Show them how this helps them, reduces stress, improves patient care, and avoids confusion. And the third, and perhaps the most important, is this: you must celebrate execution. When someone follows the system beautifully, acknowledge it. Praise is like rocket fuel. If your team sees systems as a punishment or just simply as a checklist to please the boss, they'll never ever stick. But if they see systems as a pathway for doing great work, for reducing stress, and for getting recognition, they will embrace them. Let me say that again. If your team sees systems as a punishment or a checklist to please you, the boss, they'll never stick. But if they see systems as a pathway for them to do great work, to reduce stress, and to get recognition, they'll embrace them as well. So where do we begin with systems? One of the biggest reasons chiropractors don't systematize is it feels overwhelming. So much to document, so many things to try and fix. So here's the trick. Start small, start smart. Start where mistakes happen most often. So is it an inconsistent new patient booking? Is it a messy handover? Or start where the stakes are the highest. And usually this is in around financial conversations, often in around the new patient or the report of findings consultations. These are your leverage points where a simple system has the power to reduce stress, increase trust, and elevate the patient experience, okay? So let's clear this up. A system is a repeatable process. I want to differentiate between a system and a checklist. And a checklist are very valuable, but they're not systems. A checklist is the tool that keeps the system consistent. Think about pilots, okay? They know how to fly, but they still use a checklist before every flight. Not because they don't trust themselves, but because they don't trust memory when stakes are high, okay? So the system, we have a system for the new patient journey, but we might have a checklist for the phone script, okay? Or an intake checklist or an end-of-day shutdown checklist. Again, checklists are really good when we can have something to quickly run our eye over in areas where there's constant mistakes, or again, in areas where stakes are constant mistakes or areas where stakes are high. Checklists are great because they reduce mental load and they make sure the right things are happening in the right order, even when you're busy, when you're tired, okay, or when you're training somebody new. Now, there are 7 core systems that a practice needs, okay? Now, we don't need to systematize everything at once, but eventually, okay, a self-sustaining practice will have standard operating procedures across these 7 core areas. So the first one is the new patient journey. So imagine the process from when the patient first calls the office all the way through to their first adjustment. So this is welcoming them, and again, we'll talk about this afterwards. This is also systems and operating procedures for the chiropractors as well. So every step they need to go through. The report of findings is number 2. The adjustment visits is number 3. Progress exams is number 4. Front desk operations, scheduling and billing is number 5. Team meetings and communication is number 6. And marketing and lead generation is number 7. Okay, so they're the 7 core systems. Let me say those again, okay? New patient journey, report of findings, the adjustment, progress exams, front desk operations, team meetings and communications, marketing and lead generation. Okay, now for some of you, just reading that will show you where your biggest gaps are. Okay, for others of you, you'll have many of those things covered. Now, whilst that might sound like a lot, if we are persistent and methodical getting through this, there's no reason why in the next 60 days you can't have standard operating procedures for all of those 7 areas. Okay, now when your practice has clear systems, everything flows more smoothly. Every team member knows what to expect. New staff members ramp up much faster. Patients get a consistent high-value experience. Let me just go back to one of the challenges that we have, and one of the fears that most chiropractors have, is onboarding new staff. And the reason it feels so onerous is that we just don't have systems for this. We haven't written it down. We don't have an onboarding process. But do you think McDonald's worries about this? Of course it doesn't. You know, they've got a $1 million business that's been basically run by 15 and 16-year-olds because they've got really clear onboarding and really clear systems, okay? Now, we build this out by mapping out the key areas of the practice and identifying what needs to happen, when, and by whom. And yes, there's a simple structure behind it, but the biggest win isn't the structure. It's just the clarity that brings calm. There's several different ways that you can go through, from kind of trigger to steps to outcomes there as well. The key we want to do is write down what is it that actually happens. And if we're not writing it down, in many cases it makes sense to actually video it as well. Now, here's an important reminder. Systems aren't just for your CAs. I touched on this beforehand. If you're the chiropractor, your systems matter for you as much as they do for anybody else. You cannot expect your team to be following standard operating procedures while you go rogue. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You cannot expect your team to follow standard operating procedures while you go rogue. Leadership by example isn't optional. It's foundational to you having the 7-figure lifestyle practice that you deserve. Now, I know some of you worry that systems, and you steer away from systems because they kill the vibe, okay? That they'll stifle creativity or authenticity. But here's the truth. The best systems don't eliminate creativity. They eliminate chaos, all right? You've still got room for creativity, but we want to get rid of the chaos. They create a stable framework where you can show up fully, you can deliver with consistency, and still bring your unique voice and touch to each patient interaction there. So systems aren't rigid rules, they're freedom on the other side of structure. So this week, what I want you to do is pick one repeatable process in your practice that happens every day. Maybe it's how a new patient is booked. Maybe it's how you open the practice each morning. Maybe it's how your CAs close at the end of the day. And ask yourself, if I couldn't show up tomorrow, would this still happen well without me? Okay, start there. Write out what you do. Rough is totally fine. Then share it with your team. Ask for their input and refine it together. That's how a practice operating procedure begins. Now, the best practices don't rely on memory, they rely on rhythm. You want to let your systems carry the weight so you can get back to doing what only you can do. So you've got your first standard operating procedure, which is great. The next question is, where does it go? Now, some chiropractors create a big binder with this and tuck it away. Others start a folder on their computer and hope that the team remembers where it is. The most important thing here is accessibility. Here's what matters. matters, okay, is that your team can find the system when they need it, in the moment, not 3 clicks deep, all right? If it's hard to get access to the system, if it's difficult, confusing to read, if it's overwhelming to read, then the system's not going to have buy-in, okay? It should be easy to update, because your systems document is a living document. It needs to be edited quickly if something changes. There needs to be integration. Does it live where the work actually happens? So if there's quite a complex and specific system that happens when you're taking x-rays, and I don't have a checklist that's only the x-ray machine there too, that's no use to me. And again, finally, there should be redundancy there as well. There should be a backup in case something happens. So this means we've got 2 main options. We can have a physical printed standard operating procedure manual, which I think is great. It's best for high use areas like front desk or in the adjusting rooms. It's wonderful for checklists laminated by the phone for startup and shutdown guides and things like that. It's easy to grab. However, it's not so easy to update because we have to go into the computer, update it, print it back out again, laminate it, all those sorts of things. The second structure that works is a digital standard operating procedure manual. This could be a Google Doc, a Word doc. And again, many of you are getting fancy and using platforms like Notion. These are searchable and editable, and then you can create checklists and training videos in amongst this. So this is really good for a centralized hub. And the truth is, or the best practice is, that we probably should be using both physical for quick access tasks and digital for full documentation, okay? So next week, what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up our triangle journey with something close to my heart. We're going to spend some time talking about the chiropractic culture code, because no system will stick, no standard operating procedure will be followed, and no team will thrive without the right culture to hold it together as well. Your challenge this week is for you to start to implement a systems-based practice. Take all the weight off of your shoulders and start to spread it out across your team. This is not about having multiples of you there. This is flexibility and allowing your staff to do their job, learning to be a great delegator as well. And as always, folks, thanks for listening. Keep saving lives, and I'll see you back here next week. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.